It's been nearly 5 years since we've seen Dolores Cannon, and we wanted to catch up on the new messages coming through her thousands of hypnotherapy clients regarding the changes that are in motion for humanity, specifically our evolution as a species. What she's being told is that we have two distinctly different outcomes ahead, depending on how we choose to develop our own vibrations. It is so good catching up with you again because the story and the work you've done has progressed quite a lot in the last few years. You have some new books out. You've regressed many, many more people. And what I love about what you're doing is this mosaic of individual experiences that is creating a larger picture of where we're headed as a species and where the Earth has headed itself. And Dolores, what I'd like to start with is this whole notion of first the volunteer souls that have come for this time, and then start working through the wave 1, 2, and 3 people that have been born, their jobs and how they're executing it and what their source is.
Okay, because since we worked together, I've done a lot more work and gone into a whole different direction than I was before. And a lot of it is focusing on the new Earth that we're moving into. And these times right now with the changing of the vibrations and the frequencies, that everything is different. This is a very exciting time to be alive. But that's one thing that people want me to talk about is the 3 waves of volunteers. We get thousands of emails now since I've done Coast to Coast and Project Camelot saying, I know I am first wave, I am second wave. They're identifying with it because they said for the first time it makes sense to them. Their whole life they have felt something wasn't right. And now it begins to make sense as we start giving the, what I want to call, not the symptoms, but the characteristics of the 3 waves. But to know about the 3 waves, I'm not going to have time to go back to the whole beginning.
No.
But it has to do with the ETs and the way they have watched over the Earth since it was created, because they're the ones that created us. And the seeding of the planet Earth, and they've been there all through Earth's history watching us and taking care of us. And whenever something was needed in our timeline, they would supply it. Like whenever we needed learn about fire, we learned about agriculture, all of this was brought in at those times. And every time something is supposed to be in our timeline, a new invention or something, they help it to get here. And in the old days, they were thought of as gods and goddesses because they lived among the people to teach them what they were supposed to do. Now they can't do it, so that whenever something is needed, a new idea, a new invention, it has to be in our timeline, it is put into the atmosphere. And then whoever invents it gets it. They don't care who does. And you know, there are many people all over the world working on the same invention at the same time. Well, this was going along rather smoothly because they said a lot of times they would give us something and we turn around and use it for the wrong reason. And you got to remember, this was a planet, they said, give this beautiful planet a creature with intelligence and free will and see what they do with it.
Yes.
So that's what they've been allowing us to do, these things.
The grand experiment.
And the prime directive is the one on Star Trek of non-interference. You cannot interfere with the development of a civilization. So they've been watching us and observing us. And every time they would give us something, we turn it into a weapon or something like that. And I asked them one time, isn't that interference to give us fire, give us agriculture? And they said no, because that is a gift we give you at one time at your point of development. And then what you do with it is free will. And as we turn it around and use it negative, that's our free will to do that. And I said, well, can't you come back and tell them they're doing it wrong? They said, no, because that is interference. That's what's not allowed. So this brings us up to the 3 waves. Because at the end of World War II, when we dropped the atomic bomb, really got their attention. And if you remember, at the end of World War II is when the big UFO flap began.
Yes.
And we began seeing...
the response to it in 1947, Project Blue Book, all these different
all
responses.
All of it started at the end of the war.
Yes, the NSA.
Because they were observing up until then, you know, shaking their heads, here we go through this awful World War II. But it was like we still had to let us keep doing what we were doing. But then we dropped the atomic bomb, and they got down here. They said, we better see what these kids are up to, because they should not have had this power yet. It was not supposed to be given to us until we could use it in the right way. It was supposed to be used positive. Instead, when it was invented as negative for a weapon. And it will never have the energy it was supposed to have because of that. It was supposed to be positive.
Well, could a positive use have been the proper use of it for an energy supply, for example, for nuclear energy supplies around the planet?
That's what it was supposed to be.
Yes.
But we weren't ready yet to have it because they knew what we would do with it. So we got it too soon. So that's what they were worried about. Now, with the Prime Directive, the only time they can really interfere with a civilization is if it gets to the point that we're going to blow up the world. If that happens, they would have to step in. Because if we were to blow up the world, it would send reverberations not only through our planet, but through the whole solar system, through the galaxies, and through the universes. And it would cause tremendous damage. So you would think one little planet over here isolated in this part of the solar system wouldn't be important.
But we have a multidimensional Earth, which it would have also impacted the other. Please take a drink. It would have also impacted the other dimensions of Earth.
They
and
said
we don't
that also.
stop to think about that. Yes. So the reverberations would have been felt wide and far if we had succeeded in this.
It would be as though undeclared war on the other dimensions.
Yes.
Where there are other civilizations are existing. So something like that happened, they would have to come in and stop it. That's the only way they could. So when the atomic bomb began, they were really upset about it because these kids are not going to know how to handle this. And they could very well blow up the world with it because they don't know what to do with it. So there are councils that are over all of these things. There are rules and regulations. Nothing is just by happenstance. Everything has rules and regulations that are put on it. So they go back to the council and they're telling them, oh, we don't know what we're going to do. We can't interfere. So it's like, what are we going to do? They couldn't just come in and say, stop this, because that's interference. So they said they had a meeting with the council. And it was like, we know we can't interfere from the outside. They came up with this plan that I consider to be brilliant. They said, what if we influence from the inside? So that was when they made the call, went out for volunteers to come and help Earth.
So this would have been late 40s, early 50s then, that the first
wave... This
wave...
is where I tried to put dates and years on the 3 waves. My daughter says I might be a little too strict on it because some people tell me they think they are overlapping the ages that I've come up with. But it says to send out for volunteers, I'm sorry, pure souls that have never been to Earth before, have never been contaminated. See, most of Earth, the souls of Earth, are contaminated with karma. Many lives, one after the other, contaminating with karma, having to repeat it again and again, and we're still not working it out.
Not learning.
We're caught on the wheel of karma. So they said they knew we weren't going to be able to do it. We just come through this horrible war. We couldn't take care of ourselves. We can't take care of our own lives because of the repeating of karma. We couldn't do it. So the volunteers were asked to come who had never been on Earth before. Never been in a human body. They were not contaminated. They were pure souls who were asked to come. Now, in my work, none of the people I work with know this consciously. It's only found out whenever we do the sessions, it all comes out. Otherwise, they're just confused, troubled people. They don't know what they're doing here. But the first wave, the ones I call the first wave, had the most problem of all. They were the way showers, the beginners that had to come in. Now, when I do sessions now, the only time I have people going into past lives are those who have karma to be repaid. They're not going to past lives anymore. They're either going back to where they were on spaceships, they were living on other planets, living in other dimensions, even living as light beings. They were highly evolved, and they volunteered to come and help the Earth. Or they go back to the source. And I have whole sections in my book describing what everyone says the source is, God. They all describe it the same way. These are souls that have never been in any kind of a body at all. Can you imagine how traumatic it would be to come pure from the source into this world
Yes,
now?
I can. Very disturbing. Very challenging.
Many people have done that. They go back to the source where they are one with God, where we all began. People are always asking me, they say in their session, I want to know where I'm from. So we're all from the same place. And they want to know, well, what about my home? I said, it's all the same place. They think of a home planet or something like that. That's not what it's about. It's all us. We all came from the source, from God, and that's where we all began. And when they're there, it is so full of love, and it's all this togetherness that they don't want to leave.
Yes.
So in the sessions, I asked them, well, why did you leave? It was so beautiful. I know they left because I'm talking to a body that's laying on the bed. Why did you leave? And they all say the same thing. We heard the call. They heard the call that went out, even to the other planets, to the space people, and to the ones who had never been out in from the source. We heard the call, Earth is in trouble. Will you go and help? And many of them describe meetings on the spirit side even, where they're saying, who wants to go and help? And I had one woman said, and I raised my hand. And she said, what was I thinking of?
No, there you go. So here she is, and here many of them are. And this story, so there are these consistencies you're hearing.
Oh,
from
I
these
do
waves.
thousands and thousands of people.
Yes.
When you get the same story for so many people, I put this all together like a puzzle.
Yes.
Bits and pieces. So the first wave were the ones that had the most trouble. I guess you would say they were in their later 50s, some were in their 40s, but some people say they think the early 60s would fall into the same pattern. It probably will, because that's about how long ago that we dropped the bomb. But these are the ones who don't want to be here. They're very unhappy. They have good families, they have jobs, but they don't want to be here. They don't like it. They want to go home. They don't know where home is, but they know it's not here. They don't like the violence, they don't understand it, and many of these first waivers have tried to commit suicide at different points in their life to get out of here.
I have a question at this point. If they came in and they went through the traditional thing that happens when you incarnate here, which is essentially a case of amnesia, and they don't understand consciously what they're doing here, what are they functionally doing while they're here to help shift those frequencies or further this evolutionary process?
The first wave are just living like everybody else. It's the second wave that are doing different things. But the first wave are the ones who don't want to be here, and they wanted to commit suicide, and they've had a very hard time. But the second wave, I found, would be in their 20s, 30s, maybe some over into the 40s. And when I'm doing them, they said they are called antennas, generators. They're here just to generate positive energy to affect everyone else.
Yes, that makes sense. My son is in that age group, and he and his friends are just beautiful beings who really do work toward generating communal friendships, supporting each other, non-judgment. It's beautiful.
Well, they said those kind of people can walk through a crowded mall or a store, and their energy will affect anyone that is there.
Yes.
Not consciously, they don't realize what they're doing, but their energy is supposed to be generated to affect other people. And I've had people come and say, what's my purpose? What am I supposed to be doing here? And the second wave, they'll usually say, you're just to be. And they don't like that when they wake up. They say, but I wanted to be doing something. All you're supposed to do is just be and allow the energy to affect other people.
Yes.
But the irony of it is that a lot of the second waivers don't like people, and they don't want to be around them. Their energy bothers them. But they're supposed to be affecting people, so they stay home. So they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. A lot of the second waivers, some of the first and the second do get married, but a lot of them don't want to because it's just
It's
just
sticky, it's
against me.
dense, yes.
And the second wave especially, they don't want to have children because they said having children creates karma. And they don't want to make any more karma. They want to do what they're supposed to do and get out of here. They don't want to be stuck here because if they create karma, they're going to have to stay. So many of them don't want children, and they work from their home. The second waivers do, so they keep away from people. But they're very gentle, loving people. And I asked them one time, well, why did the first wave have such a hard time? And they said, somebody has to be the beginning. Somebody has to be the one that creates the path, the way shower. And they started, and then the others, the second wave, followed, so they had an easier time.
Yes. And that makes sense.
That's the
and now
difference.
their children are these little amazing little 3, 4, 5, 6.
Well, not theirs. It's just the third wave.
The third wave,
Yeah.
yes. The third wave of
Because
being.
some of them don't
could
want
be,
children.
Right. Some of them could be, they're born to whomever, but that next one is really interesting.
The third wave are the children. And some of them now are in their teens. But these are the hope of the world. They're the gift of the world. They're here to really make a difference. And, of course, the last thing these children should be done is put on medicine and medication.
Gosh. Oh.
That's the last
Let's not
thing
even go
because they
there.
are functioning at a different level. They have come in with all of their genetics, everything is in place because they are a totally new species. And I've spoken at conferences about the new children where they're trying to educate the educators. And they have panels of these kids. And you know, they're always saying, well, they're disruptive in the classrooms. That's why they have to put them on the medication. And they've said at the conferences, the reason is they're disruptive is because they're bored.
Yes.
They said they say the teacher would ask them for an answer to a problem, a math problem or something. They tell them the answer. The teacher wants to know, how did you find the answer? And they said, I just know it. And to them, that's not enough. They want them to explain how they came by it. So that's very aggravating to one of these children. And another thing, they said they go over and over and over again the same material when I got it the first time. So they're bored. So what I was told to tell people, the teachers and the parents, is to give these kids challenges. But the other kids are doing the other stuff. Take these kids aside, maybe give them a special project, a paper to write, or something different that will challenge their minds. And they said, even if you just give them something, the younger ones, something to tear apart and put back together again.
Yes.
It's giving them a challenge.
So they can use their creativity and their knowledge. Yes.
Otherwise, they're sitting around, well, I don't, you know, I'm bored, I don't want to do this again. Give them something different. And that's how they should be treated. And they have a different way of thinking because they do grasp everything so quickly.
So what are they being, they've incarnated specifically for helping guide humanity, not just technologically, but in terms of science, in every which way, because of their ability to retain
like
knowledge?
I said, they're the gift of the world.
Yeah.
Nova had a special, it's been a few years ago now, where some of these kids were 10 years old and have already graduated from college.
Yes.
And some of these have already formed their own organizations. And it's interesting that a lot of the organizations they have founded have to do with helping the children of the world.
Yes. Yes, I'm
So
aware of that.
this is where they are going.
So they're going to be much more giving the gift of not just creating conscious community again on the planet, using
Getting it back to what it's supposed to be.
getting it back to what it's supposed to be.
Because the rest of them were caught into the wheel of karma. They don't
Yeah.
know how to solve their own problems, let alone the world's problems. These people don't have those basic karmic problems, so they can just go in a different way. And they're putting the world into this new world, the new earth, because we're headed toward a wonderful time.
Yes, that's the good news.
Technology will be used in a wonderful way. So many wonderful things are happening. So these new children have a part in it. And the first and second waves have a part, but they've had difficulty.
And so from this point forward, it should become much more harmonious for the beings that are choosing to incarnate during this period. Because as you write about, this period is going to lead us to essentially parallel Earths in a sense.
Yes.
And this has been, I've heard about this, and even from my guides was told about this 25 years ago, and they're just very slight variances in how this occurs. But let's talk about what this portrait of consciousness is showing as to how this Earth evolves and what happens to the one that is plagued with catastrophe and so forth.
Well, I've gotten a lot of information about it. I put it in convoluted 2 and convoluted 3. And I'm still getting information. I'm getting bits and pieces that I didn't know about before because I've gotten so much information, but I keep asking more and more questions. And they said, we can't answer all your questions because we don't know what's going to happen. This has never happened before in the history of a universe that an entire planet will shift into another dimension. So we don't know what's going to happen. And it's the greatest show on Earth. That all the ETs, the other beings, are out there watching to see, are we going to be able to pull it off?
And let's talk about what it is, what we're headed for.
Okay, but down through Earth's history, we've had many, many civilizations that have come and gone. We have reached the peak of what they could do. And then it was usually because of man's greed and power, they had to be destroyed and they were brought down again. And every time, the civilizations had to begin over from the very primitive stage, the very bottom. And it took so much time to build it up again. This time, they said they don't want to take the time to do that. We're losing too much. And the Earth is a living being. It is going to go into its next incarnation. It is evolving. It's going to go whether we go or not. It doesn't care if it takes the human race with it. Because we're like fleas on a dog.
Right.
And it would just as soon we all disappeared. So that's why it's going to do its thing. But if we want to go with it, we're going to have to evolve also. But because it is moving, it is evolving, and the frequencies and vibrations are changing as it moves into this other dimension. And there will be, this is where the variances come in. I get some, the answers are different, that there will be essentially 2 Earths.
Yes.
And one is the old Earth. And some people say, is that a physical Earth or not? I don't know, but it's a division and a shifting of the energies as it goes into another dimension. But the old Earth will still exist with all its negativity. This is where all the catastrophes will be. The wars, all of those things, because they say those people will stay with what they have created. And they have created that type of world. And in order for you to go with the Earth, you have to change your vibrations and frequencies to shift also. But you can't change your vibrations and frequencies instantly. It would destroy the human body. So the ones that are heavy into negativity, they can't shift that fast. So by the time they catch up, they won't be able to. Their vibrations and frequencies are so low, they will stay with the old Earth. But they said that doesn't matter. They'll get there eventually anyway.
This is exactly what was given to me back in the mid-'80s, and since then has been reinforced that part of it will also happen through attrition as people die out that are still working on certain lessons. Mm-hmm. They'll be incarnating into the one Earth, and those who have advanced themselves in their frequencies will be incarnating then to the other Earth as well, to the other one. However, this whole thing about living through the process is really the interesting part.
Those whose frequencies can't change at all will simply leave the planet. Mm-hmm. They will transition because they can't adjust to it.
Yes.
Now, it is shifting and moving, and now time is speeding up. Mm-hmm. I found all of this began about 2003. That's when it began to be obvious as the shifting was occurring. And a lot of people don't really know what's going on. All they know is something is happening and they're feeling different about it. But as it shifts, your body has to adjust with it because your frequencies and vibrations have to match the Earth's as it moves.
Absolutely.
The other ones that are into negativity will stay where they are. Mm-hmm. But if you want to move with the old Earth, you're going to have to change your vibration and frequencies. And there are a lot of physical things happening right now that people are noticing. And a lot of them go to the doctors and they say there's nothing wrong with them. This is because, as I said, you can't change your frequency instantly. It would destroy the body. It has to be done gradually. So you may notice these symptoms for a few days, and then it will go away for a month or so, and then you'll notice them again, and there will just be on and off symptoms.
What are some of the most common symptoms?
That's what I was going to tell you. Okay.
All right.
Because this is the body adjusting to the frequency. Some of the most common symptoms are high blood pressure, heart palpitations, dizziness, depression, body aches and pains, especially in the joints, nausea, headaches. But the depression and the dizziness is one that people talk a lot about, and also the heart palpitations and the high blood pressure. And they go to the doctor can't find anything wrong. Of course, they're going to put them on pills anyway.
Oh, yeah. You're on Lipitor right off the bat, right.
Oh, all of it.
All of it.
And they said it doesn't do any good because it's gone in a few days. And they say if you know what's happening, you can write it out. But the older people are the ones that are going to have the hardest time because their body has a lot harder time adjusting to all of these frequencies. The children, you don't worry about them. They're coming in with all of the frequencies already in place. They're already adjusted. It's the ones in the middle, the second and third waves, are the ones that are going to notice this the most.
And this requires, it requires dietary change in a lot of cases.
I was going to get to that too.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about it.
Well,
when you're ready.
But you can see the physical symptoms would be disturbing.
Yes.
And the doctors don't know what it is. If you understand it, you can write it out a lot easier. And I always ask in my lectures, does anyone notice their diets are changing? And they usually say they do. In order to move, for your body to evolve, to go with this, you have to change your diet. You can't eat heavy foods. The body has to become lighter so that it can transcend. Heavy foods will hold it to the earth and hold it down. So they said especially stay away from heavy meats. The best foods to eat are live foods. These mean fresh fruits and vegetables. That's the best food. If you can get organic, that's the best of all. You can eat some chicken and meat and fish, but not the heavy beefs and porks. None of that. And they said to stay away from sugar as much as possible and drink lots and lots of water. The value of water is unbelievable. They said we have no concept of what the value of water is for the body. And after you do this a while, you'll find you won't even want the sweets anymore. You will gradually have just evolved away from that.
That's true when you're properly hydrated, which most of us are chronically dehydrated.
Yes.
And so you don't know what it feels like till you force yourself to go on a discipline.
You go off of Pepsi and Coke.
Yeah, you had to go through that.
Oh, I went through that because for years that was all I did.
Yes.
And they made me get off of
Right,
it all.
I remember that.
And now I don't want anything really sweet at all because it does turn you off of that. But that's what your diets will change. And they said eventually you're going to see yourself going into all the liquids. And when I've been on the air and mentioned that, people will call in and say, I wondered why I've been wanting to eat more smoothies.
Yes, I feel the same way, yes. I could be perfectly happy just drinking my meals, except for the
because that's
occasional.
where we're moving into that part.
Yes, and our digestive systems are going to be changing in the
They
future
are. They're
too.
changing now.
Yes, very interesting. As there's something in here that I was going to ask you about a moment ago. The other thing which we're about to get into is the whole notion of what we have to do on an emotional, psycho-spiritual level as well. Now, we've just talked about what we have to do for the body, but about the emotions that we perpetuate that keep creating the karma for ourselves, which anger, frustration, resentment against others, and so forth, but also fear. And I want to get into that, but I want to ask you something. I don't know if you're comfortable going there or not.
But those are two things that I've always been told to cover in my lectures, so you've touched on them anyway.
We're going to definitely go into them. And the precursor to the fear is as we're trying to get through life, we're stumbling into every day these subliminal and not so subliminal messages, media of every kind, blaring out, creating false impressions of danger and negativity. Do your beings that work with you and share information, and perhaps some of those that have also been regressed, talk about another force that that is trying to keep humanity asleep? Or do your beings say we're just doing it all to ourselves?
We're all doing it to
greed.
ourselves, yes. But this is important because you've touched on two things that they said you have to do. Now, this first and second waves, like I said, they don't create karma. They came in with none, and many of them have like a sheath that is over them to keep them from accumulating karma because they don't want to be stuck here. Now, it's the rest of us who have accumulated karma over the years. You can't go to the new earth until you get rid of all the old karma, because that's what ties you to the wheel of karma and to the earth. You have to keep coming back to repay it. You can't move on as long as you're stuck having to repay it. So what we're told people, you've got to let it go. And I tell my clients this all the time. This is usually the cause of their illness. It's the cause of all their problems. Holding on to all the garbage and the junk and the baggage that we carry around with us.
Poisons us on every level.
That's what I say. It gets to the point that it doesn't matter if you were abused as a child. You got to let it go. Doesn't matter if your husband beat you up. You got to let it go. And people, you have to forgive. You have to release it, or you're not going to go. And I have clients that say, I can't forgive them. You don't know what they did to me. But as long as they think like that, they are holding on to karma. You're going to have to come back and do it again with the same people, same circumstances, only worse next time.
Right.
And they usually say, I don't want to do that. And then I said, you better get rid of it now. And it's not easy, because we do carry all this baggage around with us, and you have to let it go. And you'll feel such a wonderful relief when you do.
Absolutely.
So I tell people what you have to do, even if the person you're angry at and have all of these bad feelings, even if they have already left the earth, if they've died, you can still release this karma. You don't have to go to the person and face them face to face. That's very hard to do. You can do it mentally. And when you come into this earth, you make contracts with all of these people that you're going to try to work these things out. We get here, it's not that easy, and it doesn't always happen. We get stuck in the same rut again. So I tell them, when you're going to do this, picture yourself tearing up the contract with that person. Tell them, we tried. You do this mentally. We tried, we really tried, it didn't work. Let's tear up the contract, and you see yourself tearing it up and throwing it away. And you say, I forgive you, I release you, I let you go. You go your way, I'll go mine. We don't have to be connected anymore at all. You've got to mean it. You've got to believe it. And
Very
when
important.
you do, they have no more hold over you. They may try. They might try to push your buttons because they know what buttons to push. But if you really sincerely release them and let them go, you won't have any more problems. They'll try and it won't work because you have changed.
And it seems to me the big part of this is until people can begin to understand that we are the captain of our souls, and take personal responsibility for having chosen such a role to subject oneself to such situations that we have to, in essence, for us to respond to. We have a choice as to how we respond, whether we're going to be angry or whether we're going to forgive. We have to take responsibility. Something in our past, that hidden hand of karma, has created the very situation that we're in.
That's the second thing you have to do, is forgive yourself.
Yes.
Which is also very hard because it always takes two people.
Right.
And you've had a part in creating the situation. So you have to also forgive yourself, and you've got to really mean it. And when you do, your whole life will change. And this is the first thing you have to do if you're going to go with everyone else to the new earth. The second thing, you have to let go of fear. Fear is a very paralyzing emotion. If you don't understand something, you're afraid of it. And as long as you have fear, you're held to the old earth, because that's where the fear comes from. That's why I tell people, don't buy into the things that you see on television. Don't buy into what you have in the newspapers. Think for yourself. It's all to generate fear. The church is just as bad. Generate
Absolutely.
fear. The government is to generate fear. As long as they can generate fear, they will keep you suppressed. So you don't buy into it. Think for yourself. If you hear something that doesn't make a lot of sense, ask a lot of questions. I always think, well, why are they saying this? Why are they trying to spread this notion? It's there for a reason. What are they trying to do? You start asking questions and then make up your own mind. Then you develop your own truth. It may not be what I believe or what anyone else believes, but it is your truth.
Yes.
Don't give your power away to anyone. You have to release all of this fear, then you won't be tied to the new earth. So those two things you have to do if you're going to progress and go with the new earth, which is going to be glorious and wonderful. Let go of karma and let go of fear.
And so the fear-producing mechanisms on this planet, the beings and the information you've gotten, are simply a manifestation of the collective consciousness of this planet?
Well,
or is
there are beings that do it on purpose.
Well, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, you know, the church, if you want to consider
Yes.
that a being, is doing its thing, and the government is doing its thing in order to maintain control. But we have power of our own that we don't realize. Are we going to buy into it? Are we going to go with it? And then it just creates more and more fear.
Exactly. So, I mean, I agree with you.
You're going to have two worlds. Which world are you going to live in?
You get to choose.
I try to tell people it is your choice. If you want to stay with that world that has all of that junk happening, people say, oh, what about the economics? What about all these horrible things that are happening to the world, all the catastrophes? Is that the world you want to live in? Then you can have it. Or do you want to live in the positive world? They are both real. You hear about them on TV all the time. But is that your world? Is that where your focus is going to be? Or are you going to focus on this other world?
Yes, and in reality,
you have a choice.
The planet's already divided that way. In reality, people who are living a very, very heavy, difficult, karma-ridden life and not able to find their way out, suffering from depression, violence, and so forth, have no awareness of people that might be living in exactly the opposite experience and spectrum. Already, people are unaware of each other's realities. This just makes it, what you're saying makes it official. The two worlds are torn apart. And so it's very important that people understand this information and start, number one, this is the planet of choice, free will. This is an amazing, it's an amazing experiment. So let's talk a little bit about some of the glimpses you've been shown of the new Earth before we wrap it up, because I know you have a lecture in a little bit and you've had almost no sleep. So just give us a little tease of what the new Earth is about, and then we'll encourage everyone to pick up some of your books and attend your lectures.
Because this is what I'm going to talk about tonight in the lecture. Well, they can't tell us exactly because no one knows, but it will be where your focus is. But we're going to take the technology and we're going to do wonderful things with it. And we're going to be going into a world where there won't be any illness and we can live as long as we want. At first, when you go, you will take your physical body with you. And then after you've been there a while, you will turn into beings of light. So it's going to be a wonderful, beautiful place. There's colors, there's things there you can't even imagine. But it won't happen instantly. We're in the middle of it right now. People say, when is it going to happen? It is happening now, but it's a gradual process. And you won't just wake up one morning on 2012 and say, wow, everything is different. It's very subtle.
Yes.
You begin to notice little changes and little things that are different. Yeah. And then you'll be there.
So it's as long as we make a wise choice and are willing to back it up with some wise action, it's all going to be good.
This is a very important time to be alive. many exciting things are happening.
Yes, indeed. Well, thank you so much, Dolores, for spending some time, especially in a crunching schedule like this. I don't know how you do it. Thank you. To get a better understanding of the genesis of Dolores' work, you might want to watch our other interview with her. In addition, she's written more than 24 books, which you can find on her website at Ozark Mountain, which is abbreviated to ozarkmt.com. Until next time, thanks for watching CMN.